Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I got a lot of real props and a lot of questions about the pet food bank. What people don't seem to realize is that not only has COVID been really tough for a lot of families, where there's been food instability, but for pets as well, and that makes sense even outside of a pandemic time. So I'm really honored to be a participant in this as well and donating my time as well. But a lot of people, because of COVID, got a pet for companionship. They're home, they're isolated, they're locked in, and having that pet maybe for the first time, they don't realize all that goes along with properly caring for your pet, from vaccinations to dental care, teeth, etc., and preventing injury and illness. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but my own personal story. Prior to COVID, we actually had my geriatric dog. We had actually put her down. She was 15 and a half. She was starting to lose a lot of her function and ability. Arthritis was really catching up with her, and it was time. But just before things went into lockdown, we caved and we got a puppy who we will see later. She was in the post. I've got a little blue heeler puppy, and she's a lot of energy. I'm over 50 now, and I'm not having a baby around the house was a big energy change, and I don't know if I was ready for that. But one of the things that really I totally forgot about after having a geriatric dog was that I had to puppy proof my house. And it's not something that I really realized, but 15 years ago when I had my other puppy, we didn't have cables attached to walls all over our house that are now dangling with power at the other end. Even something as simple as that could cause an electrocution. So even making sure that those little things are out of a puppy's grasp, that they're gonna put stuff in their mouth. So you just have to be aware of the plants. I'll show you some examples of some plants that are toxic to dogs. Even simple things like chewing gum. Chewing gum contains a lot of the unsweetened chewing gums contain xylitol, which is toxic to dogs. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So just having an awareness, if you're not aware already, there are a lot of hazards even within your own home. So we're going to go over to the slide deck. I'm just going to share screen now. I'm hoping everything's going to cooperate with me on technology here. There we go. All right, so we're looking at canine health fundamentals, and that's what I prepared for you today. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comment box, and we will get to them certainly within the time that we've got together today. Basic care and prevention. So some of us are taking care of a pet for the first time. Some of us have long-standing, we've had those pets in our house. So it's really important to groom your dog on a regular basis, to remove the mats, bathing, but not over bathing. If you think about the different types or different breeds of dogs that you can have in your home, I have a blue heeler. She's pretty easy to take care of, but there are some dogs that have a longer or a thicker coat. Somehow, even a thin-coated dog like my blue heeler, she leaves hair everywhere in my house. I don't know how she's not bald, but there are some dogs that have a longer coat. You have to be aware that they can also develop mats under their ears, on their back, anywhere. And you really want to make sure that you're checking for any fungal infections. If you're checking for, obviously this time of year, you're going to be checking for ticks. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And you may be choosing to bath your dog. Now, because we're at home, we got time, right? Your dog's probably out getting into some mud. Hopefully we're getting some rain this time of year. So far, not yet, but hopefully soon. Anyway, bathing your dog, you have to be really careful because some dogs have very sensitive skin. So you don't want to bathe them more than every 21 days. And you want to make sure that the shampoo that you're using is going to be sensitive enough or consider the sensitivity of their skin. So you're going to want to use something like a baby shampoo or a shampoo that's specifically designated or designed for your dog. Teeth and gums. Now, this is something that I hadn't even been aware of before I took the training. I knew that there are toothbrushes and toothpaste available for dogs, but I didn't realize that over time, dental issues, dental disease, periodontal disease can actually be quite a significant problem for your pets. If you're not able to brush your dog's teeth on a regular basis, there are some ways that you can get around it. There are some chew toys that you can get that you can actually put some dental rinses into. And as the dog is chewing on those things, they're working their gums and they're working their tartar off their gums. But it's also very important because that periodontal disease can later cause problems, not only for their heart, but also for their kidneys. And the best vet bill to avoid is the one that's totally preventable. So you want to make sure that your dog is healthy as possible for as long as possible, for sure. Now, in talking to your hosts, I know that there was a big fear on doing a dog's nails. I don't know who here does their dog's nails. We can talk about that a little bit more in detail later on. But you can see that there are some different examples here. Dogs with dark nails. It's very difficult to cut a dog's nails when they've got those dark nails, but it's very important. If you're not comfortable in doing your dog's nails, a pet groomer or your vet are certainly more than happy to do so. And getting your dog used to using the nail clippers, and I can show you some examples of what I've got here when we do get to our Q&A at the end. But you can see essentially you're going to be cutting that where you can see where the quick is in the bottom right hand corner of the slide deck that I've got here. And you're just nipping off that sharp end. You're not going any shorter than that. And if you're cutting your dog's nails on a regular basis, you will see that the quick will recede to a certain degree. If you're one of the lucky ones and you've got a dog that's got the white nails, so a lighter colored dog, the white nails are very easy to trim because you can see that quick within the nail. But as you get used to, and you and your dog get more comfortable in doing nail cutting, you'll actually find that even for the dark nails, it is definitely possible. And it's also very important because nails can break. Nails can they can snag on things, and now you've got an injury that you're needing to deal with. The other important thing is if you are cutting your dog's nails and you are worried about catching the quick or a minor bleed, have cornstarch on hand, because cornstarch actually works really well for stopping up a bleed if you do happen to hit the quick. Basic care and prevention also extends to nutrition. It's really important to consider what your dog's caloric intake needs to be based on not only their weight, but how active they are. If you have a sedentary golden retriever that's going to be laying on the couch most of the day, yeah, they're a pretty big dog and they need a certain number of calories a day. But if you have a dog that's the same size, that's maybe a German Shepherd, and they're very active and they're out and they're doing things, obviously their caloric intake is going to need to be quite a bit higher. One of the failings that we all have, because we've had our dogs around us so much due to COVID, is the fact that we want to give our dogs the odd little treat. It's really important that we're not overindulging them on people food, because people food are not good for dogs. If you think about something that's got a really high fat, like maybe the meat of the fat off a steak, or maybe some French fries, or maybe a little bit of hamburger, all of these things can cause cancer. They can clog the arteries. They can lead to obesity, which can obviously lead to other problems like joint issues. So a lot of things can go into considering proper nutrition for your dog as well. Also conditioning a dog to accept treatment. I talked earlier about doing your nails or doing your teeth. Some dogs really don't like those things being handled. Some dogs don't like you coming near them when they're eating. So there's some food aggression, or if there's some socializing issues. My dog, because of COVID, she's great when I get a chance to interact with other dogs, but she's really nervous about people. And some people see that as aggression, but actually she's just afraid of them because she doesn't really know them. So if I have a group here doing a clinic, I'll have everybody seated, and then I'll ask for permission. Can I bring my dog into the clinic? Don't just totally ignore her. She'll run around, she'll sniff, she'll put her hackles up, she'll probably pee on the floor. But if you totally ignore her, she'll get used to you. And sooner or later, she's the life of the party and she's entertaining everybody. But I guess that's just a a factor of being a pandemic puppy, and she's just not used to conditioning, accepting that condition. So within your home, you've got some hazards in your home too that you have to also consider. I mentioned some plants. I mentioned, you know, your foam cords. There's some different things that can be a real hazard for your dog. Electrical cords are a hazard for puppies in particular, because oftentimes, of course, they'll try and put things in their mouth and chew their way through, resulting in electrocution. Household cleaners can contain chemicals that can be toxic to dogs, so you're going to want to make sure that those are well out of sight when you're puppy proofing your home or when you're dog proofing your home. Making sure all cleaners are stored where your dog can't get access to them. House plants can also be poisonous to dogs. So I've got some examples here that I'll show you in a bit. Dieffenbachia, elephant ears, and spider plants are all very bad for dogs. I had a student in a class actually about a month ago whose dog had actually ingested a spider plant and got quite sick from it. So they were off to the vet. If you happen to have a dog that likes to get into everything and you have a lot of houseplants in your home, it's good to know which ones are going to be a problem. And maybe it's a good time to re-gift them to someone who has a pet-free household, or put them up high where the dog can't get into them. Also, windows and balconies can have a meaner risk for falling, often at a great distance for your dog. Now, I was talking this morning with my own trainer at the gym, and she's got a little Yorkie Pomeranian cross puppy. This dog is literally 2.5 pounds. And, you know, that dog could quite literally break a leg just jumping off the bed. Just get all excited, jump off the bed. That's a great distance when you're only this big. You know, she's not much bigger than a guinea pig. So you want to make sure that your dog is kept away from open windows and off balconies, particularly small dogs, because they can actually even fit through the railing and, you know, cause significant internal injuries as well as fractures. Batteries as well can cause heavy metal poisoning and can also cause chemical burns for your dog if they're ingested. Be sure to keep batteries away from your dog. Coins as well can also be an obstruction for the airway in your dogs. And pennies contain zinc, which is also toxic to your dogs. Medication. So again, we've got our dogs in the house, we're locked down. They might get into something in our medicine cabinet. And now legalized marijuana. Marijuana also, those plants or that bud is actually also quite hazardous or harmful to your dogs as well. So always store medication far from the reach of your pet. We'll talk a little bit about other poisonings and first aid responses when we do our first aid class. Because there's some that you can actually induce vomiting for, and there's some that you do not want to induce vomiting for, because coming up is just as toxic as going down. So that's some things that you have to consider. Now, in your environment, there's definitely some environmental hazards that you have to be aware of as well. Heat, we'll talk a little bit about heat because we're coming into summer. If your dog has no shade or water, that can obviously be a hazard to your pets. Cold, freezing temperatures, if your dog doesn't have appropriate shelter, that can also put your dog at risk. And plants. So we talked a little bit about some things that you can have in your house, but also in your garden. Now we're getting ready for gardening season. Many garden plants actually are toxic to your dogs. My dog, who we'll see shortly, she's a digger. She's digging holes all over my yard and my garden right now. If I was to have bulbs or anything that's related to the onion family, those are toxic to dogs. So things like onions, garlic, chives, cyclamen, shamrocks, even tulip bulbs. So you'll either want to plant innocuous foliage or ensure that any plants detrimental to your dog's health are well blocked off so they can't get themselves into trouble. Somehow they'll find a way. Also, think about your gardening habits and where you're leaving your fertilizer, your weed control, and your pesticides. Dogs won't involuntarily eat those kinds of things, but if they're maybe walking across the grass where you maybe killed off all your dandelions and the grass is still wet, they'll pick up that toxin through their pads of their feet. Stool as well, and dogs, they're happy to eat the stool of other dogs, the cat, horses, other livestock. So it's obviously visually unappealing for us, but it's also dangerous because a lot of times there could be parasites or bacteria lurking in those species. So you want to keep a litter box away from your dog, pick up after them in the yard, and keep a close eye on them around livestock, not only for what they may be ingesting, but interaction with livestock can also cause hazards and injuries as well. Garbage. So of course, dogs lead with their nose. That can take them into a garbage pile. So leftover pizza could have been, remember I said about onions earlier, they could pick up a piece of pizza that's got onion on it. They could pick up chicken bones. They could pick up moldy foods that could also cause some digestive issues. All of these are and more are a hazard for your pet. So you're going to want to make sure your garbage is stored well away from where your dog can get into it. Tools and machinery. Your dogs can get playing with each other and get curious, and they can certainly injure themselves on sharp tools or machinery that may have been left exposed. Making sure that you store your items properly will also help to keep your dog safe. Now, things that they can pick up. So some common poisons that you can think of around your own home. There's just an example here of one of our own instructors, actually. She had bought, her mother-in-law had actually bought a big box of chocolates wrapped in foil as Christmas ornaments to hang on the tree for their grandkids. And thinking that it would be fun, you know, when it's time to undecorate, that the kids can eat the chocolate. Well, they hung all the ornaments on the tree and then they went off to bed. As they're coming down the next morning, they got hit with the overwhelming stench of poop. Their dog Black Lab had gotten through all of the chocolate ornaments and eaten them all. And that resulted in explosive diarrhea all over the house. They had to take him to the vet to make sure that he was okay, but obviously they never bought chocolate again. So it was a tough lesson learned. Unfortunately, a good outcome, but there are a lot of foods that can be quite toxic to your pets. I mentioned earlier about chewing gum that contains xylitol. There are some brands of peanut butter as well. Great treat for your dog, but some of them also contain xylitol as a sweetener. To my knowledge, when I've looked at the Kraft label, I haven't been able to find xylitol on the Kraft peanut butter, but if you're using other brands, you will want to look at the ingredient label. So just an example. As well, when you are encountering a first aid situation, as a first aider, I have a role and responsibility. If you're in a situation where you're coming upon an animal that's been injured, you want to identify yourself as being able to help if you feel that you've got the skills. And in taking a class, you would definitely have the skills to do so. You want to identify what's the problem. Are there people in danger? Is the dog at risk of further injury? You have to remain calm and assess the situation, secure the scene, request permission to help. So maybe you've come across somebody that's run into an encounter with another dog at a dog park and now their dog is injured. You want to make sure that you're securing the scene and request permission to be able to help. Some people may make an emotional response in the stress of dealing with the situation with their dog. And they may react. They may lash out, they may say something awful to you or swear at you or whatever. Understand that they're in stress and do what you can to help. You may actually have to be in a situation where you're just making sure that other people and other dogs aren't getting into a scene while the owner is dealing with the situation. And then there's restraint. You can see there's a couple of methods that are outlined here in the slide where you're dealing with a smaller dog, where you're basically just bringing the dog up to you, but you're holding onto the dog's muzzle so the dog can't turn around and try and nip at you while you're investigating the dog's body to see what may be bothering the dog or may be hurt. With a bigger dog, you'll see you probably want to help her, especially in dealing with a bigger dog, but you'll see essentially that you're hugging the dog to your body while someone else is examining the dog from head to tail. Now, we've done this with my dog, knowing that she's got some social issues, and she was very nervous about having someone else examine her. So I held her to myself, and even that, she was very unhappy about what I was doing. So if you thought about that dog now being an injured dog that may be reacting to the stress, You want to make sure that you're protecting yourself and you're protecting any other handlers from the risk of accidentally being nipped as well. The other thing that we do teach in clinic as well is how to muzzle a dog, making a temporary muzzle out of whatever you have on hand, whether it's a belt or a leash or a scarf, just so that you can make sure that that dog is not going to bite you, but that the dog can still breathe. When we're doing a nose to tail survey, we're going to be looking through the dog from top to bottom in assessing what might be bothering the dog, whether they've got bleeding. We're going to check their breathing. We're going to check whether there's bleeding or what fluid might be coming from them, whether it's an arterial bleed, a venous bleed, or maybe it's near a joint and you can actually see joint fluid. And then you're going to check the body. You're going to check the dog from head to toe to make sure that there's no spots where they're flinching. Maybe there's a bruise. Maybe there's a foreign body. Maybe they've had an encounter with a porcupine. So that might be another example. So I'm just going to stop share for just a moment, and I'm actually going to switch to a little video clip here for you. I'm just going to resume the recording. So if your dog has suspected of heat stroke, if you were able to take their temperature, you would see that their core body temperature would be elevated. They would be panting more than normal. They would be thirsty to a certain degree, but once they get kind of past that tipping point, you'll find that they won't be as thirsty anymore, just like as if we were as humans to get heat stroke. The other thing, if you were to look at their gums would tend to be a brighter pink in color, just indicating that flush or that the body reaction. So all of those things would lead you to believe or to see the signs that your dog is not doing well due to the heat. You mentioned poisons earlier about inducing vomiting and sometimes not vomiting. Okay, so I'll go right to my manual here. So this is something that we do spend a lot of time discussing in class. And does that answer your question about the heat stroke? If you can, yeah, thumbs up. Okay, perfect. In terms of things that the dogs can ingest, now there's a big section on that, but essentially there are certain medications, certain elements that dogs can ingest. Like if they were to get into a laundry pod or your dishwashing liquid or a household cleaner, those are caustic. Or a petroleum product, those are caustic. And what'll happen is that if you induce vomiting, not only have you they burn their esophagus on the way down, but if they're to regurgitate, they're gonna burn their esophagus again on the way up. So quite oftentimes what the vet would do is, get them there as quickly as possible. And they would give them charcoal, something to neutralize the toxin that they've ingested. And they can work on dealing with the poison that they've ingested. Now, if it's something that hasn't bothered them yet, maybe they've gotten into, say, chocolate or onions or something, and they're not showing any signs that it's bothering them yet, you can induce vomiting by using a 3% solution of hydrogen peroxide. And there's a ratio, and again, we talk about that in class. There's a certain percentage or volume of hydrogen peroxide you give for the weight of the dog that would induce vomiting. You don't want to give too much though, because that excess vomiting can obviously lead to other problems. And it's possible that you're causing more problems. When in doubt though, give your vet a call, give them an idea of what you think they've ingested and how long it's been. Maybe your dog got into some rat poison and it's not showing any signs of the rat poison yet. Get them to the vet as quickly as possible. They'll give a vitamin K shot to counteract the effect of the anticoagulant. So giving your vet as much information as you can about the situation that you're dealing with will produce the most positive outcome for sure. I hope that answers some of your question in a very short, bit. The other that I didn't get a chance to talk about, it's in the slide deck here as well, is now your dog's run into a skunk. Now I've got a few cameras up there, but who would use tomato juice? No. Okay, perfect. If your dog encounters a skunk, there's actually a formula that you want to make up. And it's using 1 quart of 3% hydrogen peroxide. If you have a large dog or a multiple dog, you're going to want to buy a lot. And that's actually, it's available at like the dollar store, Dollarama. Pretty easy to find. You're going to use a 1/4 cup of baking soda or sodium bicarb, and you're going to use a teaspoon of liquid dish soap. You're going to mix it up in a bottle. Don't have it on hand already pre-mixed though, because it will explode. Don't put hydrogen peroxide in a steel pail or a steel bucket, because that will neutralize the hydrogen peroxide. So plastic bottle, make it up when you need it. Now you've got a stinky dog that you're trying to deal with in your backyard. Don't wet the dog first. Put it on them fairly dry, because the skunk has an oil, and if you're wetting the dog, you're going to spread out that oil. Put it on them wet while they're dry. Mush it all in, give it some time, and then you'll have to rinse it off and then repeat as necessary. Like I said, mix the ingredients in a plastic container. Don't use metal. Let the solution sit for about 5 to 10 minutes and then repeat as necessary. Rinse and repeat as necessary. Dispose of the anti-skunk mixture as well down the drain, because for the same reason, it could explode. Monitor the dog as well, because skunks can also contain rabies or carry rabies, and you don't know for sure if your dog was bitten. You're going to want to err on the side of caution and monitor your dog very closely. So the other couple of things that I can share with you before I open it up to some questions. I know some people have a real fear of doing their dog's nails. These are the nail clippers that I really like using, because I've got really good dexterity and I can really use them quite well. This is another style. It's called the guillotine style, and you just put the nail right in there and nip the nail. I find that for my dog, the nails kind of shatter a little bit when I'm using them, so I prefer this one, and it's quite handy. So you can get them in different sizes depending on the dog that you've got. For dental, what I really like to use, how often do you get new nail clippers? I kind of watch, if I see that the nail is kind of splintering from the nail clipper, it is possible to get the blades replaced on these ones. And you can just get the blade replacement from like Petland or your pet store. These ones, obviously you can't replace the blade. So I would just get a new one if I noticed that I was having a little more challenge in doing that. Maybe once a year, for as often as I'm doing my dog's nails. Okay. Do you recommend a nail grinder? Yes, actually, I have one. So with my dog, and I will bring my dog in before we're done, she was terrified of getting her nails done. Now, it could be a fact, even though she was a puppy, she had quite a dominant personality, and she didn't like being restrained. So really, it was an issue. She was trying to bite at me. It was just not a very positive thing. And of course, I'm trying to hold this little puppy down and confine her, and it was just not a good situation. So sitting here during a pandemic, I started looking online, and I actually found this little tool that has a little grinding wheel in there, and I just put the nail in there, and you can kind of hear it, but it just takes a little file off the nails, and I got used to putting my dog's nail in there, and now I can go back and using the regular clippers, but just to kind of desensitize them to that noise, and it also takes off any rough edges. So absolutely, whatever your dog's going to be most comfortable with and what you're going to be most comfortable with. I know some people are really traumatized if they've ever had a bleed trimming their dog's nails. And I mean, I've done it. I've had dogs for a lot of years. So absolutely, it's a great tool to use. Now for dental, quite oftentimes you can get these little finger things. I find that they're very rough for the dog's gums. So yes, you could put a little toothpaste on there and get in there and massage their gums and their teeth, but I actually find that they're quite rough. I would rather recommend using either a actual dog dental toothbrush, and you can see that this end is quite well chewed, or if your dog really doesn't like that and you don't have the diligence to do it every other day, which is what the recommendation is. Let's be honest, we're busy people. I know I can see some surprised faces. This is made by Kong, and my dog is a real chewer as a blue heeler, but you can see that there's all these nice little teeth inside this bone, and this is something that she hasn't been able to destroy. but I can now put dental toothpaste or an oral rinse on this toy and give it to her to play with, and she's going to do her own teeth. So that's kind of a nice little shortcut. So what I'd like to do is I'm just going to check and see if there's any other questions in the chat box. Perfect. Nail grinder, how often do you get new nail clippers? Does anybody want to bring their mic up and ask a question of the audience, of the group? Well, you've got me here. I've got everybody on mute right now, but feel free to unmute if you have a question that I can answer for you today. Oh, what was the Kong toy that you mentioned again? Okay, so this is a bone. And I don't know what the actual name of it is, but this is actually made, it says Kong right on it. And it's virtually, of course, indestructible. So, I mean, virtually, no toy is actually going to be perfect. But I found that I've had really good success with it. Are there any other questions?
I just had a comment. While I was researching for this seminar, I went to the Canine Health Canada Facebook page, and there's an enormous amount of great information there. And you mentioned earlier about the xylitol, I think is how it's called. Yep. And I had no idea that there was xylitol in baby wipes, and that was one of the items that was mentioned on your website, on your Facebook page rather. Yeah. And it's extremely harmful to dogs. And it's funny because I bought some Canine baby wipes at one of the pet stores because my dogs are just infamous for getting into everything, and I thought how handy it would be. And I had no idea that there was a difference between regular baby wipes and the Canine. It just happened that I bought the right one. So I'm just putting it out there for anybody else that wants to learn more. There's so much great information on your Facebook page and stuff. Even as myself, I have almost a 9-year-old dog, and I never in a million years would have thought of that. So just heads up for everybody if you want to learn more to go to your Facebook page.
Absolutely. And if you'd like, what I can do is I can just actually take my friend Caleb here and I can just show you how to do a quick first aid bandage before we call it a day. If that works for everybody. Okay, so you've got a dog now with a bleed that you're wanting to deal with. We've got a few steps that we would cover in clinic, and when we do a clinic, you actually get a chance to work on hands-on. So it's actually pretty cool. I'll bring Caleb up here, and Caleb, I'll just put him on camera here, wherever I can fit him on the table. Oh, he's going to be a little big. I'll just hold him up. So I've got a bleed here on his leg, so we're going to take care of a little bleeding injury. I'm going to put some wound gel, and you can use whatever you have on hand. I just use, when I do clinics here, I just use Vaseline. Not that I would use that on a wound, but it works very good for demonstration purposes. I'm going to put a gauze square over the area of the injury. So I put the wound gel on, I put the gauze square on there. Now I'm going to put my absorbing layer, and in this case, just for demonstration purposes, I've got quilting batting, which I picked up at Walmart. And so I cut it into strips, and that's going to absorb any bleeding. Okay, I'm just going to wrap that all nicely. Next layer, I'm going to take gauze roll. So it's just a clingy gauze roll that you can buy in any pharmacy. It's going to be the first compression layer, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to put on a bandage that's going to help stop a bleed. Depending on the bleed that you've got, if you've got an arterial bleed with a dog, you've actually got a very short window because they're quite small to stop that bleed. So you want to get compression on quite quickly. You've got a horse, if you think about it by volume, a horse has about the same amount of blood in them as my SUV's gas tank. So it can take a little bit longer to stop a bleed with a horse. You've got a little more of a window. Now this is cling. This is a cling wrap that you can actually buy in any pet store, any tack store, like all our horse people. But it clings to itself. It's Coflex. So I'm going to wrap that over the bandage as well. And I can make it fairly snug because I'm wanting to compression. The nice thing about this stuff is it actually clings to itself. Unlike a tensor bandage that over time gets tighter and tighter, if you've ever had to readjust a tensor bandage, this will not get tighter and tighter and cause constriction. Now I want to make sure my dog's not taking it off. So then I'll use medical tape or just cloth tape. I'll take a strip and I'll put that around there just to hold things in place. Now, if I've got a dog that's going to be a little awkward and try and chew on that, because we know what dogs will do, the next step I would do is I would actually do a collar, especially if they're going to fuss with whatever bandage you've just put in place. And we actually do take some opportunities to actually build an Elizabethan collar here in clinic, but you've seen the big cones, the cone of shame. And you can always improvise and make one out of cardboard as well. Whatever you've got on hand to deal with what you've got going on. So if there's any other questions from the audience, I'll take those right now.
I have a question.
Sure.
Should I type it?
No, you can ask it.
Okay. I am queen of wrapper of bandages on my dogs, especially one that had allergies all the time. How do you know if you're wrapping it too tight?
Okay, if you're doing a bleed, if you have a bleed that you're putting a compression bandage on, the way that I kind of go with the tension, I do this with horse people as well as with dog people, but if you've got a bleeding wound that you're trying to stop the bleed, what I would do is I would take this Coflex, this wrap, pull it as tight as you think you can get it before you think it's going to rip, and then bring it back about halfway. So if you think about it, about 50% is the stretch. That's going to still allow the movement, any swelling, if you think about it, if you're in an area where maybe there's a lot of muscle, but it's not going to cut off the circulation. Whereas if you use a tensor bandage over time, it will get tighter and tighter and tighter, and it will cut off the circulation. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I would like to introduce my COVID child.
I love him.
This is Dolly. She's got a lot of energy. She's been on quite a few.
Dolly.
And she wants to play with the demo dog.
Perfect. I said we should have like an AFB Zoom call for dogs once a week, and just the dogs get on the call.
Absolutely. Get on and socialize.
Oh, Trish's dog is there. So much dogs. I love it. This has been incredible. Thank you so much. I learned so much.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, you can certainly feel free to follow me at Canine Health Canada. There is also the Canine Health, or Canine First Aid Canada, rather. Canine Health Canada is the main website or main Facebook page, or Canine Health Canada website. We do also have I see you've got your dog over there as well. We do also have first aid kits available, and we can certainly get those out to you as well. So we can get that link up and out to you. And you know what? It's a great cause, so I'm really happy that I was able to help you guys out tonight. So.
Awesome. We're honored. And we'll send everybody that information so they can follow your page. They've got information on how to buy the first aid, information how to register for your courses. I found the Kong toy while we were talking, so I'll send.
Okay.
We'll send that out in the email. And then if there's anyone that needs to connect, they'll have your contact information. And then as part of AFB Pet Club, the goal always was to generate revenue to fund courses and work with you on that. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that, because this is incredibly valuable information that you don't get from your vet, really, because you're not having that one-on-one. So I love it.
Perfect. Well, we have full day, and we have classes for kids as well. And then we have certified instructors right across Canada and into the States as well. So there could very likely be an instructor that could work with you face-to-face or in a hands-on situation right close to where you're living. So right across the country.
Awesome. We're excited for the partnership. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody, and stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you.